but make sure that they're looking at what will advance women's roles in the fight for a sustainable planet and a sustainable economy. And don't take it for granted. Ask the questions, press the point, be willing to say, well, where are women and girls fitting in to what you are doing in your particular area? So that to me is imperative. Ask the question, make the point, and keep asking it and keep making it until you get a satisfactory answer.
Yeah, happy to give my 2 cents. My view is that every challenge looked at from the other side is an opportunity. And in this instance, we're talking about half our population that are living with disadvantage, but the opportunities, if we can unleash the potential of them, the whole community is going to do better. So I'd very much endorse what Secretary Clinton's just saying, is that if we can each be thinking about when we look at a problem that women in these disadvantaged situations are facing and say, how can I actually switch that around? You'll create a whole lot of value, and it's certainly how we operate as a business, is you create value, everyone can share in it, people who benefit, but also, I don't know, your shareholders in businesses, you're in agricultural businesses, finance, etc.
On my end, if you're a woman and you're in these halls, first of all, take up space, speak out, and push the agenda for women. But I think the advice shouldn't be to women, the advice should be to men, to give space to women and give us that seat at the table. And if you're a funder, fund women. If you're a person with a solution or a crazy idea, give that crazy idea, implement it. Because to everyone, women have the solutions, and women on the ground are doing the work. It's already there. Just give us that space and that seat on the table, and we'll make your lives so much easier.
I'll just build on what you said. Power is not given, it is taken. And so, you step up and take it, because it's never going to get given. And so women have half of the solutions, as you say. Just speak out, grab the microphone, and have a little bit of sharp elbows. I mean, look, we're sitting with a role model beyond belief, Madam Secretary. And so I think many of us watched you and watched the extraordinary roles that you have played and the extraordinary role model for women. We saw you grab the microphone. And so I think emulate Madam Secretary.
Maybe we'll give 1 minute each to talk about how we empower, or what kind of advice you give to young people, because there are many in the audience, young women in particular. But I think with Hindu, we'll start with how do you lift up young indigenous people?
I think when we talk about the indigenous peoples, we might all know indigenous peoples protect 80% of the world's biodiversity. And when we talk about climate change, we are talking about our home. We are talking about our resources. We are talking about our land. We are not talking about the commodities. So we are playing a big role on the ground to fight climate change, to conserve all the high-spot biodiversity that are helping us to keep 1.5 if the others make also their job. So we cannot be just a side. Indigenous youths are already taking the wisdom from the indigenous elders. That's what we do in our constituency. So indigenous people's voice must be in the tables. Just so we celebrated the loss and damage finance and many other finance, nature, health, water, etc. We need a direct access finance for the communities that can help the young people, like in my community, who can not leave their land to become a climate refugee, but build their own land, who can be fertile, who can help them to be there and to save their culture, their identity. If we do not have this direct access finance, it's going to be a disaster for all indigenous peoples, but more for the planet. Because when we lose our knowledge, we lose keeping the balance of all the ecosystem. The planet cannot be alive. So we need this direct access finance. And we need also indigenous peoples to be sit in the table. Absolutely. In this loss and damage, we still have one component of governance. active observer must be there. Because if we are losing those non-economic losses, it is our culture, our identity, we are not paying the damage of anything. So be there, please, give us the seat, give us direct access finance, and make the indigenous women voices with the details of the knowledge that we do have to help us reach the goal that we want, 1.5 to stay alive. Thank you.
Lifting young women, I think, for an older woman, it has to be about making space, inviting in, minimizing your own and maximizing others. I think that's the role we should all be playing. And, you know, because there are brilliant, brilliant minds out there doing awesome things, and making sure we sweep the road for them. Others have swept the road for us. Thank you.
As the resident young person on this panel, I first of all want to express my gratitude to all the women who've paved the way so that I could sit here in front of all of you myself. But if you're a young person in the audience and you're afraid to speak up, just take that first risky step. Honestly, it's just speak out, use your voice. The first step is the hardest, and it's okay if you're young to make mistakes and to change your decisions as you grow up and mature and be better informed. But right now, you see the urgency, and we've led the climate movement, and we brought it to where it is today. It's really important that we continue that momentum and to use the kind of fuss and the social media and the noise that we're doing towards pressuring policymakers and also not just corporations and all of these spaces into making real action. And we need every single one of us, not just one person, but hundreds and thousands of us around the world. So take that first step.
And I'll be really brief because we're past time and everyone has covered it, but I'd completely echo that and say we old people really need the perspectives of you young people. So please challenge us, keep us thinking fresh, or we'll never change or get anything done. So I completely endorse that.
Well, to wrap it up, because I think we're now going to hear some final words from Secretary Kerry, who's been an incredible leader on climate for years. I would only add to what you've heard, particularly if you are gripped with the absolute urgency of doing something, please study what you want to advocate for and get done. Be informed about what you're talking about so that you can literally talk to anybody, whether it's in a cabinet room, a board room, or a living room. You want to be able to talk to people and have a certain level of authority. Passion takes you there, but it won't carry you beyond unless you know what you're talking about and can make a very strong argument for the kinds of changes that you want to see and the solutions that you think can get you to those changes. So please be prepared and be ready to make the case that you want to make to whoever you need to try to convince, because at the end of the day, this is a persuasion campaign. We have to persuade more and more people to do what we believe we know should be done, but we have to make sure that they do their part and they get into, you know, a position to be able to help us avoid the worst crises of what we're facing in the future. So take that passion and harness it to information and advocacy and go forth and do everything you can to make a difference.
Now I'd like to welcome to the stage for closing remarks and a bit of gender diversity, a man who needs no introduction, former Secretary of State, and now we're going to have two former Secretaries of State, and current Special Presidential Envoy for Climate, John Kerry.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be with you, and thank you for letting one man be on the panel. I'm appreciative. Frankly, I haven't had a chance to sit through all the panels, and I rarely get that chance, but I'm really glad I could today. I think you will agree with me that this was brilliant, encouraging, inspirational, and so important in terms of a conversation to motivate so many other people who aren't here to be part of this battle. So I thank you, every single one of you who spoke so emphatically today to remind us of the powerful truth. You can't address the climate crisis without empowering the women of the world, and you can't empower women if the world doesn't step up and address the crisis of climate. So Director Jennifer Klein, Ambassador Gupta from the Biden-Harris administration, White House, and the Blinken State Department, you have really both put gender issues where they need to be, which is front and center in every single conversation. Let's be clear, and I think for Hillary and for me and those of us who have been working at this, we've known this for some period of time, but women's issues are really inextricably tied to every issue of consequence. None more so than the climate crisis. And on these issues, appropriately, women are setting the standard. Just a few days ago, we listened to Vice President Kamala Harris, who's been a leading voice to combat the crisis, and she delivered the U.S. national statement here at the COP. And you just heard, you see her sitting there at the other end of the line from Hillary, Sue Biniaz, who is literally a treasure and institution with respect to getting anything done at a COP. She's a premier negotiator, our lead negotiator, and she has been to every single COP and really has set the standard for how we get this done. And Christina Chan, who you heard from a little while ago at the very beginning, and she's an adaptation expert. She's our lead for the negotiation to create this new fund for climate impact response. And she won a great victory the other day when the first time in history we passed a controversial issue, difficult issue, right up front on day one of this COP. That's never happened before. And Christine, we really are appreciative, Christina, for your leadership. We also have many other women leaders in my office that I'm privileged to have, I will tell you, on climate finance, climate and security, clean energy, and climate and the ocean. Every single one of them, women, and my terrific chief of staff who's sitting over here, Kitty DiMartino. So listening to these panels, I'm not exaggerating when I say to you, boy, the more we can get you engaged, the more we can get women to the table, the more women whose voices are heard on why these crises are so real in terms of day-to-day life for people all around the world. The more that happens, the more we will be good hands and the more we have a chance of winning this battle. I'm also lucky enough to have two daughters, Alexandra, who's a terrific filmmaker and who's working on the climate issue right now, and my daughter Vanessa, who's a physician who happens to now be the WHO, the World Health Organization envoy for health and the environment. And she has started a program in Africa in 5 countries where she, a practicing physician, is now the CEO of an effort that is training and has trained over 40,000 doctors, nurse practitioners, midwives, nurses, in leaves behind a growing infrastructure to be able to sustain the care that is delivered by many people who are concerned about what's happening there. So they've reminded me on more than one occasion, first of all, don't engage in any mansplaining, and secondly, the irony that the modern environmental movement was actually inspired by a trailblazing woman named Rachel Carson, and that very movement has for too many years been seen as male, pale, and Yale. Not so today, I might say. Hillary and I are both veterans of Yale, so maybe we'd make it out. But that's why I'm really glad to be here in Dubai, and particularly with Hillary. Hillary, I'm not exaggerating one iota, and you, I think, felt the warmth of your welcome here, but you really are an inspiration to generations of people around the world, countless of millions, and we thank you for everything you've done. I followed Hillary as Secretary of State, and when I set out as Secretary to stitch the environment, the whole question of the climate crisis, into every fabric of the department, I actually knew right away what a winning playbook looked like. I wanted to do for the climate crisis what Hillary had already done for women and girls, issues at the department. And Hillary, I really couldn't have a better partner now on this initiative, where you and I both need to work together to weave both of these issues together. And that will make us much stronger in our ability to communicate on a global basis. When I think of the women who are on the stage today, my friends, it really couldn't be more clear how much our capacity to be able to win this fight will depend on our ability to be able to bring to people around the world an understanding of the connections that were discussed here today. Women and girls, particularly the most vulnerable, bear a disproportionate burden of the climate crisis. And every single gender disparity is compounded by the crisis. Women are almost invariably, in almost most countries in the world, the managers of the household, the managers of the family, and they are therefore the managers of health, managers of feeding, managers of food production, and ultimately, if it doesn't work out, they're always protecting their children and they're at the forefront even of migration as a result of the forced circumstances of their lives. And in all of this, particularly in certain parts of the world, it's women who don't only just hold together the household, but who have to collect the food, and collect the firewood, be able to heat and cook and provide for the capacity of the family to be able to stay together, if it is together, and often isn't. And the underlying gender disparities in everything, access to education, health, information, mobility, resources, training, healthcare, all of it, including that women are often in a position where they are the least likely to survive disaster. And so the State Department, for this reason, recently released the first ever strategy to respond to the effects of climate change on women. And it is precisely why we are now trying to match analysis with advocacy with action, with a full suite of new programs and outreach alongside the WISE initiative. Much of this is going to come through the President's emergency initiative on adaptation, and much of it is going to come because of the commitment of folks like Hillary and Sue and the others who've been here today who are going to keep pressing this issue. So, my friends, earlier I mentioned the godmother of the modern climate cause, Rachel Carson, a diminutive woman who in the 1950s saw what was happening with the spraying of DDT, spraying children, spraying families, spraying streets, communities where people were living and walking around. And she alone discerned that this was a people killer. It was a poison. And she took that fight on. And in doing so, she transformed the entire face of America, because in winning that battle, she set us up for the modern movement that won the battle of 1970 with the first Earth Day and passed the Clean Air Act, the Safe Drinking Water Act, the Marine Mammal Protection Act, the Coastal Zone Management Act, and the Endangered Species Act, and actually created the Environmental Protection Agency. All of that came from this one woman who took on the biggest companies in the world and who won the battle. So she wrote in every outthrust headland. By the way, she's a beautiful writer, almost poetry. And she wrote, in every outthrust headland, in every curving beach, in every grain of sand, there is the story of the earth. Women and girls, being the most impacted, are also the greatest validators. And that's why we have to have this last important chapter of the environment movement, which must overcome the climate crisis. And I think it's going to be a chapter that is written by women, for women, told by many of the women who are gathered here and so many others around the world, for the survival of humankind and for the sake of our planet. And that is the message that should go out of COP28 in Dubai. Thank you. You're welcome.
I'd like to invite out the earlier panelists for a photo. No photo? Yes, photo?